My daughter-in-law sold my husband's tools, but one old toolbox exposed their debt. The day I learned my daughter-in-law had sold my late husband's tools, I was standing in my garage holding an empty space where his red metal toolbox had always been. The pegboard was bare. William's socket set was gone. His hand saws were gone. Even the old carpenter's level with his initials carved into the wood had disappeared from the wall. My daughter-in-law, Susanne, stood in the doorway with a trash bag in one hand and a tired expression on her face. Rebecca. They were just old tools, she said. Michael said you never use the garage. I thought clearing it out would help. I looked at her. Not at the empty shelves. Not at the missing workbench. At her. You sold them? Mostly. A man who runs a resale shop took the lot. He paid cash. I put the money toward the repairs we discussed. We discussed cleaning the gutters. I said, we did not discuss selling my husband's things. She sighed as if I were making a difficult afternoon out of nothing. It was scrap metal and dusty boxes. You can't keep every object forever. Then my neighbor, Mr. Harlan, appeared beside the open garage door, holding something small and rusted. Mrs. Clark, he said, I think you'll want this back. It was William's old toolbox. The one Suzanne had missed because it had been shoved beneath the workbench for years. Inside was a black notebook with William's handwriting on the first page. And written beneath a date from 9 years earlier were 4 words that made my hands go cold. Michael Loan House Security. If you believe memories and property deserve respect, subscribe to this channel, like this story, and tell me in the comments. What would you do if someone sold your late spouse's belongings without asking? William had been gone for 6 years, but I still expected to hear him in the garage. That may sound foolish to people who have never loved someone long enough to memorize the sounds they make. But after nearly 4 decades of marriage, you do not stop hearing a person simply because the house becomes quiet. I still heard William's boots against the concrete floor. I still heard the short whistle he made when he was looking for a screwdriver. I still heard the way he said my name when I brought him coffee. Rebecca, you're spoiling me. He never said it as a complaint. The garage had been his place, not a man cave. William would have laughed at that phrase. He said it was simply the one corner of the house where he could repair something without someone asking him to explain every step. He built shelves for our kitchen in that garage. He repaired Laura's bicycle there after she rode it into the mailbox. He taught both our children how to use a hammer without smashing their thumbs. And when our older son, Michael, was 19 years old and furious with the world, William took him into that garage instead of sending him away. Hand me the wrench, he would say. That was how William reached people. Not with lectures. With work. Michael had always been different from Daniel and Laura. Daniel had been impulsive but warm-hearted. Laura had been sharp, ambitious, and sometimes too quick to decide she knew what was best. Michael was quiet. Even as a child, he carried disappointment like a private stone in his pocket. He was intelligent, but he hated being corrected. He could charm people when he wanted something and disappear when he did not want to answer a question. Still, William loved him deeply. We both did. When Michael married Suzanne, I wanted to welcome her. She was polished where Michael was rough around the edges. She worked in property management, wore her hair in a smooth blonde bob, and spoke in a calm voice that made people assume she was reasonable before they knew her. For the first few years, she was kind to me. She brought flowers on Mother's Day. She remembered my birthday. She invited me to Thanksgiving at their townhouse and made sure I had a chair with good back support. But kindness can change when money enters the room. I had seen it happen before. Not always in dramatic ways. Sometimes it started with a question. Have you thought about downsizing? Sometimes it arrived as advice. You should really simplify your paperwork. And sometimes it hid inside a smile. Wouldn't it be easier if we helped you manage things? Suzanne's questions started after William died. At first, I understood. People worried about widows. They worried whether I was lonely, whether the house was too much work, whether I needed help carrying boxes from the basement. But Suzanne did not ask about my loneliness. She asked about the deed. Is the house fully paid off? She said one Sunday while drying dishes beside me. Yes. Did William leave it directly to you? Yes. Is there a mortgage or a home equity line? No. She smiled. That's wonderful. You're sitting on a very valuable asset. I remember turning off the faucet and looking at her. My home is not an asset to me. Susanne, it's my home. She laughed lightly. Of course it is. I just mean you have options. I did not argue. At the time, I thought she was simply someone who viewed life through property values and loan rates, because that was her job. Now I wondered whether she had been studying my house long before she sold William's tools. The week before the garage was cleared out, Michael had come by unexpectedly. I was in the kitchen making tomato soup when I heard his car pull into the driveway. He did not knock. He used the spare key I had given him years ago, back when the children were younger, and I believed family keys were symbols of trust rather than access. Mom? He called. In here. He walked into the kitchen holding his phone. His tie was loose, and there was a crease between his eyebrows. Do you still have Dad's old file box? He asked. I set down the spoon. What file box? The metal one. He kept receipts and things in it. I have several file boxes. Why? Michael opened the refrigerator and took out a bottle of water without asking. I'm trying to find something. A record. Dad mentioned it once. What kind of record? He looked at me, then looked away. Something about a loan. My heart gave a small, uneasy beat. William had kept records of everything. He wrote down home repairs, car maintenance, and birthday gifts. He kept receipts in labeled envelopes. He had a notebook for every project and a file for every important decision. But I did not know which loan Michael meant. What loan? I asked. Michael twisted the bottle cap in his hand. It doesn't matter. Forget I said anything. It matters if you came into my house asking about it. He gave a short laugh. You always make things bigger than they are. That is not an answer. For a second, irritation flashed across his face. Then it vanished. Dad helped me out years ago. I paid him back. Did you? He looked at me sharply. Of course I did. Then why do you need his records? Michael's phone rang before he could answer. He glanced at the screen, then stepped into the hallway. I could not hear everything he said, but I heard enough. No? Not yet. A pause. She doesn't know where it is. Another pause. I said I'll handle it. When he returned to the kitchen, I was standing beside the stove with my arms folded. Who was that? I asked. Work. What are you handling? He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Mom, you worry too much. Then he kissed my cheek, took his water, and left. I stood in the kitchen for several minutes after the door closed. I kept telling myself I was being suspicious. Michael had always been private. Perhaps he was dealing with a business problem. Perhaps he wanted to make sure William's old records reflected the loan correctly. Perhaps Suzanne had asked him to organize something. There are many excuses a mother can invent when she is afraid the truth will hurt. I made every one of them. 3 days later, Suzanne called. Rebecca, I'm coming by Saturday morning, she said. Michael and I want to help you tidy the garage. I don't need the garage tidied. Well, you may not need it, but it's full of things. You could sell some of it and make a little money. I don't want to sell it. She paused. It's not healthy to hold on to everything after someone dies. I stared at the kitchen wall. William had been gone 6 years. The comment did not come from concern. It came from impatience. I have kept what I choose to keep, I said, and I am not selling anything this weekend. Suzanne's voice cooled. Fine. I was only trying to help. That was Friday. On Saturday, I went to Willow Creek Community Library to help with their annual book donation sale. I was only gone for 3 hours. I left around 9 and planned to be home by noon. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Suzanne's car parked beside the curb. My first thought was that she had come to apologize. Then I saw the garage door open. A gray pickup truck was backed halfway into the driveway. 2 men were loading boxes into the truck bed. For a moment, I did not understand what I was seeing. Then I saw William's workbench. The old oak workbench he had built from reclaimed lumber. The one with burn marks near the edge, from a soldering iron and a small brass plate that said W. Clark. In letters he had stamped himself. One of the men had his hands beneath it, preparing to lift. Stop! I shouted. Everyone turned. Suzanne stood near the garage door in jeans and a long gray cardigan. She did not look embarrassed. She looked annoyed that I had come home early. Rebecca, she said. I thought you said you would be gone longer. I walked toward the garage so quickly that my knees hurt. What are they doing? I found someone who wants the old stuff. It's a good deal. You had no right. Michael agreed. This is my house. It's Michael's father's property too. No, I said. It belonged to William. William left it to me. Suzanne crossed her arms. Rebecca, I know you're emotional about this. I looked at the men standing beside the truck. One of them held William's hand plane. Another had a box filled with tools I had watched my husband use for half my life. I am not emotional, I said. I am telling you to put everything down. The older man glanced at Suzanne. Ma'am, do you own this stuff? Yes. Then we don't want any trouble, he said. Suzanne stepped closer to me, lowering her voice. Don't humiliate us over a pile of rusty tools. I turned to her. You came into my garage while I was gone. You sold property that belongs to me. You brought strangers onto my land. And now you are telling me not to humiliate you? Her face flushed. Michael said you wouldn't care. Then Michael lied to you. Or you chose to believe him. For the first time, Suzanne looked uncertain. She pulled out her phone and made a call. I knew before she spoke who was on the other end. Michael, she said, your mom is making a scene. I could hear only the faint sound of his voice, not the words. Then Suzanne said, you told me she wanted to clear out the garage. She listened. Her face changed. Not much. But enough? No, she said. No. I already sold most of it. I stepped toward her. Put him on speaker. She held the phone away. Rebecca. This is between Michael and me. No. It became my business when you took my husband's things. The older man from the pickup cleared his throat. Ma'am, we bought a lot of it. But there was one small toolbox I left behind. It looked like junk. Your neighbor saw it and asked if I would hold on to it. My heart skipped. The red toolbox? Yes. Where is it? Mr. Harlan Hussett. He said he knows you. Suzanne ended the call abruptly. She looked at the men. Unload the workbench, she said. The younger man frowned. That wasn't our agreement. It is now, I said. I took out my phone. I have your company name on the truck. If anything leaves this garage, I will report it as property taken without my permission. The older man did not argue. Within 10 minutes, The workbench was back where it belonged. Some tools had already been sold, but the men agreed to give me their records and contact the buyers who had taken the remaining boxes. Suzanne stood silently near the door. When the truck finally pulled away, the garage looked wounded. Empty hooks. Dust outlines where cabinets and boxes had stood. A missing circle on the wall where William's old clock had hung. I could have screamed. Instead, I turned to Suzanne. "Leave," I said. Her chin lifted. "You cannot blame all of this on me." "No," I replied. "I blame you for what you did today. I will decide what I blame Michael for after I speak to him. You are going to regret turning this into a family war." I thought of William's workbench, the tools, the empty pegboard. Then I thought of Michael asking about a loan record. "I did not start a war," I said. "I came home to one." Suzanne left without another word. That evening, Mr. Harlan brought the red toolbox across the street. He was a quiet man in his 70s, who had lived next door since before Daniel was born. He carried the box carefully, both hands under the handle. "Didn't feel right seeing it go?" he said. "I knew Bill kept that thing close." I placed it on my dining room table. The metal was scratched and faded. The latch stuck when I lifted it, just as it always had. On the inside of the lid, William had written his name with a black marker years ago. "William Clark, return if found." I almost laughed when I saw it. Then I opened the tray. There were old drill bits, a folding ruler, 2 small screwdrivers, and a yellowed envelope tucked beneath the bottom compartment. Inside the envelope was the black notebook Mr. Harlan had mentioned. William's handwriting covered the pages. Most of it was ordinary. Replaced water heater valve. Paid electrician. Cash. Lent Daniel truck for weekend. Then I reached a page dated 9 years earlier. Michael Inofura. Nam Cham Luan. The words were underlined twice. Below them, William had written, "Loan made from home equity proceeds after Michael's contractor business failed." Michael signed promissory note. Agreed. Repayment begins January 2018. House is not collateral. Rebecca must never be asked to sell or refinance because of this. My hands began to shake. There were several entries after that. 2018, no payment. 2019 promised payment. After new project. 2020 requested extension. 2021 partial payment, $500. 2022, no further contact about balance. Then, on the last page, written in darker ink, were words I had never seen before. "If Michael says the debt is settled, ask him for the canceled check." I did not forgive it. I only postponed the conversation because I hoped he would choose honesty before I was gone. I read that sentence 3 times. William knew. He knew Michael had not repaid him. He knew there might come a day when Michael would try to rewrite the past. And he had hidden the truth inside the one toolbox Suzanne had decided was worthless. At the bottom of the final page, there was one more note. Mortgage office called. Michael asked whether he could be added to the deed for estate planning. Told them no. Need to tell Rebecca. I looked up from the notebook. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard a car pull into my driveway. I knew the engine. Michael's black SUV. He had come for the toolbox. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to ask my son a question. He could not answer with a smile. Michael did not knock. He used the spare key. The sound of it turning in the front door made something in me tighten before he even stepped inside. I was sitting at the dining room table with William's red toolbox open in front of me. The black notebook lay beside it. I had placed the page about the loan under a small glass paperweight, so it would not curl at the corners. Michael entered the hallway. took 2 steps toward the dining room, and stopped. His eyes went directly to the toolbox, then to the notebook, then to me. "Where did you get that?" he asked. I did not answer his question. "Why did you come here tonight?" He stood very still. "Suzanne said you found Dad's toolbox." "She said more than that. She said you told her I wanted the garage cleared out." "I never told her that." "Then she lied?" Michael ran a hand through his hair. "Mom, Suzanne gets carried away. She thought she was helping. She sold your father's things." "I know. I'll get them back." "You will get every item back? And you will give me the name of every person who bought something?" His expression hardened. "I said I'll handle it." "No?" I said, "You will handle what you did. I will handle what belongs to me." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he looked at the notebook again. "What does it say?" I lifted the glass paperweight and turned the page toward him. "You tell me." Michael walked closer. He did not sit. His eyes moved over William's handwriting. "Michael Inalfura. Namtam Luan." Loan made from home equity proceeds after Michael's contractor business failed. House is not collateral. Rebecca must never be asked to sell or refinance because of this. The color drained from his face. "That was years ago," he said. "Yes. Dad forgave that debt." "No, he did not." "He told me he did." "Then where is the canceled check?" Michael looked at me. "You really think I would steal from Dad?" "I think your father wrote down that you promised to repay him. I think he wrote that you did not. And I think you came to this house last week looking for these records." He glanced toward the front window, as if he were considering leaving. Then he said, "You don't understand the context." "Then explain it." He pulled out a chair and sat across from me. For the first time, I saw something familiar in his face. Not the boy he had been. William. The shape of his brow. The way he pressed his lips together before speaking. It made the moment harder. "Dad loaned me money when my contracting business collapsed." Michael said, "I know that. I was supposed to pay him back." "Did you?" "I tried." "That is not what I asked." He leaned forward. "Things happened. The economy was bad. Clients didn't pay. Suzanne and I had bills. Dad knew all of that." "Did you pay him back?" "No," he said. The word was barely audible. I felt an unexpected wave of relief at hearing it. Not because I was glad he had failed. Because the truth had finally entered the room. "How much did you repay?" I asked. $500? That is what William wrote. "Then why are we doing this?" Michael asked sharply. "You found an old notebook?" "Fine. I owed Dad money. He's gone. You have the house? What do you want from me?" I stared at him. "What do I want?" "Yes? Do you want me to pay you $40,000? Is that what this is?" I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. "This is not about money yet. This is about why you and Suzanne have been asking questions about my deed." His face changed. Only slightly. "But I saw it? You're imagining things?" "Am I? You always do this when someone tries to help you. You make it into a threat." The sentence landed with the same polished cruelty Suzanne had used in the garage. "You are emotional. You worry too much. You make things bigger than they are." I had heard versions of those words before. They all meant the same thing. Stop trusting what you see. But I had spent too much of my life listening to people search for truth in records. Maps. Letters. And archives. I knew that when someone wanted you to doubt yourself, the answer was not to argue louder. The answer was to keep looking. "Why did you ask about William's file box?" I said. Michael did not answer. "Why did the mortgage office call him?" His eyes snapped toward the notebook. "You read that?" Yes? That doesn't mean anything. Then tell me what it means. He stood. I am not doing this. You came into my house with a key I gave you when I trusted you. You stood in my garage while your wife sold your father's belongings. You have not repaid a debt your father documented. And you have asked questions about my home. You are doing this. His jaw tightened. You don't know what Suzanne told you. I know what William wrote. You know one side? Then give me yours. Michael looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, We were trying to protect the house. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the lie was so familiar. Protect it from what? From probate. From taxes. From you getting older and needing long-term care. You should have thought about putting the house in the family already. My house is in the family. I live in it. You know what I mean? Yes, I said. You mean putting your name on my deed? Michael said nothing. I continued. You want me to add you to the title. It would make things easier later. For whom? For everyone? There it was again. Everyone. A word people use when they mean themselves. I stood and closed the red toolbox. The conversation is over. Mom? No. You will return every tool that was sold. You will give me the resale records by tomorrow evening. And you will not come into this house again without my permission. His face darkened. You can't treat me like a stranger. You decided to act like one? Michael stared at me, then turned and walked toward the front door. At the threshold, he looked back. You're making a mistake. I held his gaze. So did you? After he left, I called a locksmith. I did not wait until morning. The man arrived within an hour. He was polite, middle-aged, and careful not to ask questions. By 10:30 that night, every exterior lock had been changed. When he handed me the new keys, they felt heavier than keys should. I stood in the doorway after he left, looking out at the dark street. Changing a lock is a small thing. But sometimes a small thing is how you tell yourself that your home still belongs to you. The next morning, I called Patricia Hale. I had hoped I would not need an attorney again, so soon after everything with Laura and Daniel. But life does not schedule betrayals one at a time. Simply because you are tired. Patricia listened while I explained the garage sale, the toolbox, the notebook, and Michael's questions about the deed. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Do you have the original notebook? She asked. Yes. Keep it in a safe place. Do not write in it. Do not tear out pages. Take clear photographs of every page, but preserve the original. I already did. That is good. Has Michael sent you anything in writing about the house? Not yet. Then do not confront him further. Let him talk if he chooses to. And I want you to contact the county recorder's office to verify that no deed, lien, or other document has been filed against your property. The word lien made my stomach turn. Could he do that? Anyone can try to file paperwork? Patricia said. It does not make it valid. But we need to know whether anything has been recorded. That afternoon, I went to the Franklin County Recorder's office. The clerk behind the counter was a young woman named Elise. I gave her my address and waited while she searched the property records. For a minute, I watched her face. Then she frowned. Mrs. Clark, she said. There was a recent title inquiry on your property. What does that mean? Someone requested copies of the deed history, property tax records, and legal description. Who? The request came through a title company, but the person making the request is not always listed. Was anything filed? No recorded deed transfer. No mortgage. No lien. I released a breath. Then Elise added, there is something else. The title company made a preliminary inquiry about adding a joint owner through a quitclaim deed. I gripped the edge of the counter. When? 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. Before Suzanne came to clear the garage. Before Michael asked about the loan record. Before I had even realized they were searching my husband's files. Can you give me the name of the title company? I asked. Elise wrote it down. Hawthorne Title and Escrow. It was located 10 minutes from Michael's office. I took the paper and thanked her. I did not drive there. I wanted to walk into that office with William's notebook and demand to know who had been asking about my home. But I called Patricia instead. She told me to send her the information. Do not contact them on your own, she said. I can make a formal inquiry. We want answers that are documented. That phrase brought me comfort. Documented. It was what William had done in his notebook. It was what I had learned to do when Laura tried to call me incapable. It was what I needed now. Not shouting. Not guessing. Proof. That evening, Michael sent me an email. The subject line read, "Need to clear up misunderstanding." For several minutes, I stared at it without opening it. Then I called Patricia. Should I read it? Yes, she said. But forward it to me first. Exactly as it is. Do not reply until we discuss it. The email was short. Mom, I'm sorry about yesterday. We are all stressed. And Suzanne should not have sold anything from the garage. But I need you to understand that the house issue is not what you think. There is a plan that would protect you and keep the property from being tied up. If anything happens, we have a meeting at Hawthorne Title on Friday. You do not have to make a decision. Just come listen. Michael, I read it twice. We have a meeting. Not. Would you like to have a meeting? Not. Can we discuss this? We have a meeting. As if my house had already become a family project with a schedule I had not approved. At the bottom of the email was an attachment. I clicked it open. It was a draft document titled Estate Preservation Plan. At first, it looked harmless. There were polished headings about avoiding probate, preserving family property, and simplifying future decisions. Then, I reached the section titled Proposed Ownership Structure. It said that I would transfer a 50% interest in my home to Michael. No payment. No independent appraisal. No protection for me if he divorced Suzanne, filed bankruptcy, owed creditors, or simply decided he wanted to sell. And beneath that, in a paragraph written in dry legal language, was a sentence that made everything clear. Michael Clark would assume responsibility for resolving certain prior family obligations in exchange for the transfer. The debt. They wanted my house to erase the debt he owed William. They wanted me to hand over half of my home so Michael could call himself free of the promise he had broken. I forwarded the email and attachment to Patricia. Then I sat at the dining room table with William's toolbox in front of me. For years, I had thought the tools were reminders of a man who fixed things. Now I understood something else. William had not left me a box of rusty metal. He had left me a warning. And before Friday came, I intended to find out exactly how far my son and daughter-in-law had gone to take the home. William and I built. Friday morning arrived, cold and clear. I stood in my bedroom for several minutes, looking at the dress I had chosen to wear. It was dark blue, plain, and comfortable. The kind of dress I wore when I wanted to feel composed without drawing attention to myself. Then I put on William's gold watch. It had stopped working years ago, but I kept it in the top drawer of my dresser. I wore it only on days when I needed to remember the kind of man he had been. Steady, careful, never fooled by a polished story when the numbers underneath did not add up. Patricia had contacted Hawthorne Title and Escrow the day after I forwarded Michael's email. She did not accuse anyone, She simply informed them that I had not authorized a transfer of any ownership interest in my home and that I was represented by counsel. The title company responded quickly. A closing officer named Andrea Sloan confirmed that Michael and Suzanne had requested a meeting to discuss a quitclaim deed. They had provided the address of my house, a copy of the current deed, and a draft estate preservation plan. They had also told Andrea that I was an elderly widow who wanted to simplify her affairs. But when Andrea asked whether I had signed an engagement letter or spoken with the title company personally, they had no answer. That was when she contacted Patricia. Mrs. Clark, Andrea told me on the phone, we do not prepare or record a deed transfer without the current owner's clear consent and proper identification. But I thought you should know that Mr. and Mrs. Clark seemed unusually focused on moving quickly. How quickly? I asked. They asked whether the deed could be recorded before the end of the month. It was only 10 days away. I asked why. Andrea hesitated. Mr. Clark mentioned that there was a financial matter with a deadline. A deadline? Michael had not told me about any deadline. He had told me this was about protecting me. The truth was simpler. He needed something from my house before someone else took something from him. Patricia and I agreed that I would attend the meeting. Not because I intended to sign anything, because I wanted Michael and Suzanne to say, in front of witnesses, what they believed my home was worth to them. Hawthorne Title and Escrow occupied a small brick building near the courthouse. The lobby was clean and quiet, with gray chairs, a bowl of peppermints, and framed photographs of old Willow Creek neighborhoods. Michael and Suzanne were already seated in the conference room when Patricia and I arrived. Suzanne wore a cream-colored blazer and carried a leather folder. Michael wore a dark suit that looked too new for someone who claimed his financial problems were under control. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Suzanne stood. Rebecca, she said warmly. I'm glad you came. We can finally talk like adults. I looked at her. I have always talked to you like an adult. You have not always treated me like one. Her smile faded. Andrea Sloan entered a moment later, followed by a notary who sat quietly near the end of the table. Several documents had been arranged in front of Michael and Suzanne. I did not touch them. Andrea began in a professional tone. Before we discuss any possible transfer of ownership, I need to confirm that Mrs. Lacking Clark understands she is under no obligation to sign any documents today. I understand, I said. And that any transfer would be voluntary? Yes. Michael shifted in his chair. Mom already understands all that, he said. Patricia looked at him. Then there is no need to rush her. The room became quiet again. Suzanne opened her folder. Rebecca, this is not about taking anything from you. It is about keeping the house protected. If you add Michael as a joint owner, the property can stay in the family, avoid unnecessary complications, and be easier to manage later. Later when? I asked. If something happens to you. What if nothing happens to me? Susanna blinked. Well, eventually, everyone needs a plan. I have one. Michael leaned forward. Mum, this is practical. You own a house worth more than $300,000. You have no mortgage. You could transfer half to me now, and we would make sure you never had to worry about anything. I looked at the documents. What exactly would you be making sure I did not worry about? Michael's eyes moved towards Suzanne. That was all I needed to see. Patricia spoke calmly. Mr. Clark, your mother has located a written record showing that William Clark loaned you $41,500 from a home equity draw after your contractor business failed. The record states that the home was not collateral and that Rebecca was never to be asked to refinance or sell because of that debt. Suzanne's face turned pale. Michael did not look at me. He looked at the tabletop. That was private, he said. It became relevant when you asked your mother to transfer half her home to you in exchange for resolving prior family obligations. Patricia replied. Andrea looked from Patricia to Michael. What prior family obligations? She asked. Michael said nothing. Patricia placed a copy of the estate preservation plan on the table. She had highlighted the clause beneath the proposed ownership structure. Michael would assume responsibility for resolving certain prior family obligations in exchange for the transfer. This language is vague, Patricia said. But the surrounding circumstances are not. Michael owes a debt to his late father. He and Suzanne knew Rebecca had not agreed to forgive it. They sought a title transfer that would give Michael an ownership interest in her home without payment, without an appraisal, and without meaningful protection for her. Suzanne's cheeks flushed. We were trying to help her avoid probate. Patricia turned to Andrea. Does adding Michael as a joint owner necessarily avoid all probate concerns? Andrea shook her head carefully. No. It can affect ownership, creditor exposure, tax considerations, and future planning. It is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Mrs. Clark should receive independent legal advice, which she clearly has. Michael's voice rose. You made us sound like criminals. I looked at him. No, Michael. Your actions did that. He pushed back from the table. I came here because I was trying to fix things. Fix what? I asked. He stared at me. For the first time, he looked frightened. Not angry. Frightened. My business debt, he said. The old debt. Everything. What is the deadline? He looked down. Monday. What happens Monday? The answer came from Suzanne. The bank is calling in a line of credit. Michael turned sharply toward her. Suzanne? What? She said. She deserves to know now. The room felt smaller. How much? I asked. Michael's silence lasted so long that I almost repeated the question. Then he said, $87,000. I closed my eyes. $87,000. The old contractor business had failed years before. Michael had taken loans, made promises, and accumulated debts that never seemed to disappear because he kept trying to bury them instead of facing them. And now he had looked at my home as if it were the last available payment. Were you planning to borrow against my house? I asked. No, he said quickly. Suzanne looked away. That was answer enough. Patricia reached into her folder and removed another document. This is an email received from Hawthorne Title during our inquiry, she said. It was sent by Suzanne Clark 3 days ago. Suzanne's head snapped up. What email? Patricia read it aloud. Once Michael is on the deed, can he use his share as leverage to get the lender to pause? We only need enough time to get Rebecca comfortable with a sale if she refuses the refinance option. The words hung in the room. No one spoke. Suzanne's face drained of color. Michael looked at her as though he had never heard the email before. You wrote that? He asked. She swallowed. I was trying to keep us from losing everything. My mother's house is not our everything, Michael said. It was the first honest thing he had said all morning. But it came too late. Andrea closed the file in front of her. Hawthorne Title will not proceed with any transfer without a clear written instruction from Mrs. Clark and confirmation through her attorney, she said. At this point, I believe it is appropriate to end this meeting. Michael stood, but he did not leave. He looked at me. Mom, I didn't know she wrote that. Did you know she came into my garage and sold William's tools? Yes. Did you know she told the buyer I wanted them gone? He looked down. She said you were ready to clear things out. Did you know that was true? No. Did you ask me before she did it? No. Did you know I had never forgiven the loan? He took a breath. No. That is not true. Michael. You asked me about William's file box because you were afraid the record existed. He said nothing. You knew enough to be afraid of the truth. I continued. But not enough to stop trying to profit from it. His eyes filled with tears. I wish I could say that seeing my son cry softened everything. It did not. It made me sad. There is a difference. I am not signing anything, I said. Not today. Not later. You will not be added to my deed. You will not use my home to pay your debts. And you will not turn your father's kindness into an excuse to take more from me. Michael looked as if he wanted to argue. Then he nodded once. Barely. Patricia and I left the title company together. Outside, the wind had picked up. I held my coat closed as we walked toward the car. You did well, Patricia said. I didn't feel strong. Strength rarely feels dramatic while you are using it, she said. It often feels like doing the next necessary thing. The next necessary thing was not revenge. It was protection. Over the next month, Patricia helped me take several steps. We filed a written notice with the county recorder that no deed transfer was authorized by me. We updated my estate plan and placed my home in a revocable trust that named an independent professional trustee and clear instructions for my care if I ever became unable to manage things myself. I did not exclude my children from my will out of anger, but I made it clear that no one would receive control over my home simply because they were impatient for it. I also changed the garage lock, and I installed a small security camera near the driveway, not because I wanted to live in fear, because peace sometimes requires practical choices. As for the tools, the resale, the shop owner gave me a list of buyers. Some items had already been sold and could not be recovered, but several people returned what they had purchased after they learned the items had been sold without my permission. One man brought back William's handplane wrapped in a clean towel. I'm sorry, he said. I bought it because it looked well cared for. It was, I told him. Another woman returned the old level, with William's initials carved into it. She held it in both hands and said, My father had one just like this. I understand why it matters. By the end of the month, most of the tools were back. Not all. Some things could not be recovered. But Suzanne agreed, through her attorney, to pay the value of the missing items and return the money she had received from the sale. The agreement also stated that she and Michael would not enter my property without permission. It was not an apology. Not really. It was accountability written down. Michael's lender did not receive an interest in my home. The bank worked out a separate repayment arrangement with him after he provided financial records. He had to sell his truck, close part of his business, and take a job with another contractor while he paid down the debt. Suzanne moved out several months later. I did not celebrate. A marriage ending is never a victory, even when deception helped bring it there. Michael began seeing a financial counselor. At first, I did not know whether it was because he wanted to change or because he had run out of places to hide. Over time, I saw small differences. He stopped asking about my house. He began making modest monthly payments toward the debt William had recorded. Even though Patricia explained that recovering the old loan through court could be complicated after so many years. I'm not paying because you can force me, he told me one day. I'm paying because Dad trusted me, and I made that trust worthless. I looked at him across the table. Then do not make promises you cannot keep. I won't, he said. I did not tell him I believed him. Trust is not restored by a single sentence. It is rebuilt by what a person does when no one is watching. A year after Suzanne cleared out the garage, I opened the red toolbox again. The tools were arranged neatly inside. William's black notebook sat in a fireproof box in my filing cabinet, along with my trust documents, account information, and a list of people I had chosen to help me if I ever needed support. The garage was still dusty. The workbench still carried its old burn marks. and the clock on the wall still needed winding every Sunday. But the space no longer felt like a place someone else could quietly empty. If I ever needed support, the garage was still dusty. The workbench still carried its old burn marks, and the clock on the wall still. It felt like mine again. I stood at the workbench one afternoon and picked up William's old carpenter's level. His initials were still visible in the wood. For years, I had thought he left those tools behind because he loved fixing things. Now I understood that he had left me something more important. A reminder that what is built with patience should not be surrendered to pressure. A home is not a debt payment. A widow is not an open door. And family love is not permission to take what someone else spent a lifetime protecting. If Rebecca's story meant something to you, please subscribe to this channel, like the video, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that boundaries can be loving and still be firm. And tell me in the comments, if a family member tried to use your home to solve their debt, would you give them another chance? Or would you change the locks and protect your peace first?